There is a kind of weakness that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't storm into a man's life. It doesn't roar. It doesn't strike like a dramatic failure or a catastrophic collapse. Instead, it settles in quietly, soft and slow, like dust gathering on a blade once meant for battle. Most men don't notice when it begins. It starts with small hesitations. The workouts you skip because you're tired. The tasks you delay because they feel inconvenient. The dreams you once carried with conviction now feel too heavy to lift. Day by day, the gap between who you are and who you intended to become widens, not by force, but by subtle erosion. This is the quiet decay of strength. You feel it when you wake up already drained, even before life makes demands of you. You feel it when simple responsibilities feel overwhelming. You feel it when your attention fractures into 1,000 digital hooks pulling your mind apart. The world has become engineered to keep you overstimulated but underdeveloped, busy but not better. You're surrounded by instant gratification yet starved of real fulfillment. And so many men silently carry this weight. They move through their days with a low-grade dissatisfaction, a constant hum of, "I should be more than this." Not because they are weak by nature, but because everything around them encourages softness, convenience, and escape. Strength today doesn't die in battle, it dies on couches, behind screens, under the illusion that comfort equals safety. But comfort has a cost. The mind that was once sharp becomes dull. The spirit that once burned becomes dim. The discipline that once defined your sense of self slowly dissolves, replaced by impulses, distractions, and emotional reactions. You feel yourself slipping not in a dramatic fall, but in a gradual decline you struggle to explain. And because the decay is silent, you think you're the only one experiencing it. You're not. Men across the world feel this internal fading, but very few admit it. Not because they lack honesty, but because they fear the truth, that their strength is no longer something they command. They fear that somewhere along the line, without meaning to, they handed control of their mind, attention, and willpower to forces that do not care about their potential. This fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you aware. What you're experiencing isn't failure. It's the natural outcome of a world designed to keep you passive and distracted. Modern life offers every pleasure, but removes every struggle, and without struggle, a man forgets what he is capable of. Strength isn't destroyed in a single moment. It fades through repetition, repeated avoidance, repeated indulgence, repeated surrender. But just as the decay is quiet, the awakening can be quiet too. It begins the moment you recognize what has been slipping. The moment you notice that the man staring back at you isn't defeated, he's dormant. Beneath the overstimulation, the exhaustion, the noise, the pressure, something in you is still alive. Something in you still remembers what it feels like to act with power, clarity, and purpose. Strength may fade, but it never disappears. It waits, and this is the moment you begin to reclaim it. There is a reason the weakness you feel clings to you so heavily. A reason the smallest tasks feel overwhelming. A reason your motivation flickers instead of burns. You may have blamed yourself for this, told yourself you're lazy, flawed, or broken. But that judgment has never been fair. What you're feeling is not entirely your doing. There are deeper forces at play, ones shaping your mind and body long before you had the awareness to resist them. On a biological level, your nervous system is overloaded. The human brain wasn't designed for constant alerts, messages, flashing screens, endless information, and dopamine spikes that hit every few seconds. Your ancestors faced physical threats, not digital noise. Their stress hormones rose for survival, then returned to calm. Yours rise from notifications, arguments online, unfinished tasks, and the fear of falling behind. The body interprets it all as danger. You feel tired not because you are weak, but because you are running on a system that was never built for this pace. Psychologically, you've been conditioned to expect ease. Modern life provides comfort at every turn. Food delivered to your door. Entertainment available instantly. Tasks automated. Discomfort minimized. Pleasure maximized. You were never given the chance to build the mental resilience previous generations developed by necessity. They endured hardship daily. You were taught to avoid it. That doesn't make you weaker, it means your environment trained you to survive in a different, softer way. You adapted exactly as any human would, but the adaptation came with a cost. Environmentally, you live in a world where men are rarely initiated into strength. There are no rites of passage, no communal expectations of discipline, no cultural push toward mastery. Instead, there are distractions, temptations, escapes, and systems designed to keep you consuming instead of becoming. Without a path to walk, a challenge to face, or elders to guide you, you drift, and you blame yourself for drifting. But consider this truth. Men were never meant to build themselves alone. Even the ancient warriors you admire, the samurai, the Spartans, the monks, the Stoics, did not rise in isolation. They had structure. They had ritual. They had community. They had expectations that forced them to grow. You have been left without any of these, and yet you expect yourself to have the same strength they had. That expectation is not only unfair, it's impossible. The weakness you feel is a signal, not a verdict. It's your mind telling you that you've been running a race you were never conditioned for. It's your body telling you that overstimulation has replaced real challenge. It's your spirit telling you that you've been deprived of purpose, meaning, and direction. You are not weak. You are untrained, and untrained does not mean incapable. Once you understand the forces that shaped your current state, the shame around your struggle begins to dissolve. When shame dissolves, clarity emerges. And when clarity emerges, you are finally able to begin the process of rebuilding, not from a place of guilt, not from a place of blame, but from a place of truth. Your strength has not left you. It simply hasn't been awakened yet. It's easy to imagine ancient warriors as flawless, unshakable pillars of discipline, focus, and strength. But that image is incomplete. They were not born iron-willed. They were not immune to hesitation, doubt, fear, temptation, or the inner voice that whispers, "You aren't enough." The difference between them and modern men isn't that they lacked weakness, it's that they learned to confront it directly. The samurai, for example, were trained to face not just the enemy in front of them, but the chaos within their own minds. Their writings describe battles with hesitation, fear of dishonor, the burden of responsibility, and the conflict between desire and duty. Their training in stillness, breath, posture, and presence was designed to bring their wandering thoughts under command. They understood that the greatest threat to a warrior was not an opponent's blade, but a distracted mind. The Spartans were no different. Their culture appears brutal from the outside, but it was built this way because they recognized a truth. Human nature gravitates toward ease. They fought against their own instincts every day. The agoge wasn't just physical training, it was a system created because the Spartans knew that without discipline, the mind weakens. They understood that fear grows when the mind is unchallenged, so they plunged themselves into discomfort to prevent softness from taking root. The Shaolin monks also spent years battling internal weakness long before they mastered their outward strength. Their most significant struggles were mental, overcoming emotional impulses, restlessness, cravings, and the urge to avoid difficulty. They believed that the mind must be strengthened before the body could follow. Their training halls were filled with men who once battled laziness, fear, and doubt, just as modern men do. Even the Stoics, often remembered as calm, unshakable thinkers, wrote openly about wrestling with anger, anxiety, temptation, and discouragement. Their journals and meditations exist because they constantly confronted the same mental storms men face today. They created principles, reflections, and daily rituals because they knew that a person left alone with his emotions becomes ruled by them. These warriors lived in worlds that demanded strength, yet they still struggled internally. They had weak moments. They faced fear. They doubted themselves. They had days when they wanted to run, hide, or surrender. But they refused to hide those struggles. They treated weakness not as a source of shame, but as an enemy to study, understand, and ultimately overcome. This is where the connection to you becomes clear. The battle you're fighting isn't new. The weight you feel, the hesitation, the fading discipline, the inner chaos, is the same burden men have carried for thousands of years. The difference is that modern life has removed the structures that once shaped men into warriors. But the internal fight? It has always been there. What you're experiencing isn't a modern flaw, it's a human challenge. And just like the warriors before you, you can transform it into strength. To the samurai, weakness was not defined by physical inadequacy or a lack of brute strength. A warrior could possess a powerful body and yet be considered fragile if his mind wavered. For them, true weakness was internal. It was instability of spirit, inconsistency of intention, and a mind that could not hold its shape when life applied pressure. They believed that the greatest danger a man faced was an uncontrolled inner world. A samurai rose every day, knowing that his weapon was useless if his thoughts wandered. A blade can be sharp, but a mind clouded with fear, doubt, or emotional turbulence becomes dull in the moments when clarity is required most. That is why their training began long before they ever touched a sword. The foundation of their discipline came from cultivating presence, an unshakable awareness that remained steady regardless of circumstance. To them, weakness appeared in many forms. It appeared in hesitation, when a man knew what must be done but paused out of fear or indecision. It appeared in attachment, when emotions or desires controlled him instead of his principles. It appeared in distraction, when his attention fractured and his spirit drifted from the present moment. It appeared in inconsistency, when he allowed impulses to override duty. These were the cracks through which weakness entered. The samurai believed that a wavering mind was more dangerous than any enemy. If a man could not command himself, he could not command his actions. And if he could not command his actions, he could not shape his destiny. In their eyes, strength was not measured by external performance, but by internal steadiness, the ability to remain centered even in fear, chaos, or uncertainty. This is why they practiced meditation, breath control, and rituals of stillness. They weren't seeking calm for the sake of relaxation. They were forging a mind that would not betray them. Their stillness was a form of sharpening, the same way one would refine a blade against a whetstone. The mind, they believed, must be sharpened more often than the sword. A samurai's greatest fear was not death. It was acting without clarity. They believed that if a man's spirit was anchored, his actions would follow naturally. But if his spirit was unsettled, even the simplest task could become chaotic. To them, this inner disarray, this lack of command over one's own thoughts, was the true definition of weakness. A man loses his power the moment he loses his presence, and yet, this view offers something important for modern men. Weakness, according to the samurai, is not a permanent state. It is simply a lack of inner command. A mind that has not yet been trained. A spirit that has not yet been given shape. They believed that any man, regardless of his starting point, could become strong once he learned to discipline his mind. To them, strength was not bestowed, it was earned through mastery of the self. This path is still open, and it begins the same way it did for them. By learning to command your inner world. To the Spartans, weakness was not something subtle or philosophical. It was blunt, visible, unforgiving. They judged a man not by what he claimed he believed, but by what he chose when hardship confronted him. In their eyes, every decision revealed a truth. Either a man acted from courage, or he acted from fear. Either he moved toward discomfort, or he sought comfort. There was no middle ground. A Spartan warrior believed weakness began the moment a man allowed fear to guide his actions. Fear-driven behavior, hesitation, avoidance, excuses was a crack in the armor. They did not condemn fear itself. Every man felt fear. What they condemned was obedience to fear. When fear dictated a man's choices, it softened his spirit. It made him unreliable. And to Spartans, an unreliable man was a danger not just to himself, but to the entire phalanx beside him. They believed that weakness spread like rot. One man who retreated could cause another to retreat. One man who hesitated could cause a formation to crumble. One man who chose comfort over duty could open the path for an enemy to break through. Their standards were brutal because their reality demanded it. Every day a Spartan lived, He understood that the cost of personal weakness could be paid in the lives of brothers, family, and homeland. That is why they forged themselves through relentless hardship. The agoge, the training that shaped Spartan warriors, was built on a simple truth. Comfort makes a man predictable, soft, and easily broken. Hardship makes him adaptable, resilient, and capable of holding the line when everything inside him screams to run. The agoge stripped boys of ease, so they could learn to face fear directly. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they knew a man who has mastered discomfort becomes difficult to defeat. To Spartans, a comfort-seeking man was not just undisciplined, he was untrustworthy. A man ruled by comfort cannot be relied upon in battle, in leadership, or in life. They believed that comfort makes a man selfish. It narrows his world to his own desires, his own cravings, his own safety. A warrior must be bigger than himself. Duty must matter more than preference. This is why Spartans valued endurance, obedience to principle, and unwavering discipline. They judged strength not by physical ability, but by a man's ability to act correctly, even when fear or pain tried to bend him. Weakness, in their definition, was when a man allowed internal pressure to override external duty. This definition still speaks powerfully today. Modern men do not face spears or battlefield formations, but they face battles with comfort, procrastination, fear of judgment, avoidance, distraction, and the temptation to take the easy path. These are simply new versions of the same forces Spartans fought every day. The Spartan lesson is brutally simple. A man is only as strong as his willingness to confront discomfort. A man is only as weak as his willingness to avoid it. Strength is built when you move toward what you fear. Weakness grows when you run from it. The Stoics had a view of weakness that cut deeper than physical limits or emotional strain. To them, weakness was not about how much a man could lift, how much pain he could tolerate, or how much hardship he could endure. Weakness was far more internal and far more subtle. It lived in the space between stimulus and response. It revealed itself in the moments when a man lost command of himself. In Stoic philosophy, true weakness was a lack of inner control. A man was considered weak not when he struggled, but when he allowed his emotions, impulses, or desires to govern his actions. To them, strength meant sovereignty over the self. Weakness meant surrendering that sovereignty. If anger dictated your words, if fear dictated your choices, if desire dictated your behavior, then you were not leading your life, you were being pulled through it. They believed that the untrained mind reacts, the disciplined mind chooses. This distinction formed the foundation of their worldview. A man who cannot command his reactions is a man who can be controlled by circumstances, by other people, or by his own emotional storms. The Stoics knew that external events were unpredictable and often harsh. They did not measure strength by the ability to bend the world, but by the ability to remain steady regardless of it. To them, the source of weakness was internal chaos. This chaos could show up as anger that flares without thought, as anxiety that spirals out of control, as envy that poisons the mind, as sadness that becomes self-pity, or as pleasure-seeking that overrides long-term purpose. They recognized all of these as forms of inner slavery moments, when the self is overpowered by emotion instead of guided by reason. This belief did not make them cold or emotionless. It made them intentional. The Stoics understood that emotions are natural, but unexamined emotions can rule a man. Their practices, journaling, reflection, reframing, intentional breathing, voluntary discomfort, were designed to give them space between the feeling and the action. In that space, they found freedom. In that freedom, they found strength. A Stoic warrior did not seek to eliminate emotion. He sought to master it. To them, weakness was allowing emotion to dictate your behavior. Strength was the ability to feel fully, yet act wisely. Weakness was reacting impulsively. Strength was responding deliberately. Weakness was being dragged by circumstance. Strength was holding your internal position regardless of external turbulence. This definition remains powerful because it applies to every man in every era. Modern life is filled with emotional triggers, insults, doubts, temptations, conflicts, disappointments, insecurities. A man who reacts to all of these without control quickly becomes drained, disoriented, and overwhelmed. He becomes a passenger in his own life. But a man who builds inner command becomes steady. He becomes someone who cannot be easily provoked, manipulated, or broken. The Stoics believed that the highest form of strength was mastery of self, and the deepest form of weakness was the absence of that mastery. This is the universal truth they left behind. A man who controls his inner world can withstand any outer world. A man who doesn't will be ruled by both. Ancient warriors understood something modern men rarely recognize. Strength is not built by constantly adding more to your life. In the beginning, strength is built by removing what weakens you. Before a blade can be sharpened, the rust must be scraped off. Before a warrior can rise, the noise must be stripped away. This is the rule of subtraction, the first and most essential phase of killing the weak mind. Today, most men are overstimulated and underfocused. Their attention is pulled in 20 directions before they've even finished breakfast. Notifications, messages, videos, endless scrolling. Constant noise. It's a battlefield of distractions. And most men lose the fight before they even realize it began. A mind that is flooded cannot think clearly. A mind that is overstimulated cannot act with power. And a man whose attention is scattered cannot build discipline. This is why the rule of subtraction is the warrior's first step. Subtract the noise. The samurai trained in silence. They believed clarity could only be found in an environment free from constant stimulation. No man can hear his inner command when surrounded by endless digital chatter. Warriors reduce what competes for their attention until only what matters remains. You may not live in a dojo, but the principle is the same. Cut the noise until your thoughts return to you. Subtract the comfort. The weak mind feeds on convenience, soft beds, warm rooms, instant entertainment, easy options. A Spartan would see modern comfort as a slow poison, not because comfort is evil, but because over-reliance on it erodes resilience. Warriors limit comfort not to punish themselves, but to remind their mind who is in command. When comfort becomes optional, discipline becomes natural. Subtract the excess. Most men carry emotional and physical clutter they don't realize is draining them. Too many commitments, too many distractions, too many possessions, too much mental baggage. True strength requires simplicity. A clear room leads to a clear mind. A clear mind leads to decisive action. The less you carry, the farther you can travel. Subtract the impulses. A weak mind is ruled by urges, checking your phone, snacking when bored, scrolling when anxious, escaping when stressed. Warriors train themselves to pause before acting. That moment of stillness is a reclaiming of power. When you choose your actions instead of obeying impulses, you begin to regain control over your life. This is the rule of subtraction. Remove what steals your strength before you try to build strength. Modern men often try to add new habits, new routines, new goals, and new disciplines, without clearing the ground first. But a structure built on a cracked foundation will collapse. Warriors don't pile strength onto instability. They clear the weak parts first. Every distraction removed sharpens the mind. Every comfort limited strengthens the spirit. Every impulse resisted reclaims control. Every unnecessary burden dropped frees your will. The weak mind dies not through addition, but through subtraction. And once the excess is removed, the solid core of your strength begins to emerge. For ancient warriors, the morning was not simply the beginning of a day. It was the moment a man claimed command over his mind. They knew that chaos in the morning becomes chaos in the heart, and chaos in the heart becomes chaos in action. So before they trained, before they fought, before they made decisions that shaped their fate, they purified their minds at dawn. Today, most men wake up already behind rushed, overwhelmed, pulled into digital noise before they even take their first breath. They start their day reacting instead of choosing, and once the mind enters reaction mode, it rarely escapes. The morning mind purge exists to break this cycle. The samurai began their mornings in silence. They sat, breathed deeply into the lower abdomen, and allowed their thoughts to settle like sand in still water. They believed the first thoughts of the day set the tone for the warrior's spirit. A scattered morning created a scattered mind. A centered morning forged a centered blade. This simple stillness was not meditation for relaxation. It was preparation for war. The Spartans approached mornings differently, but with the same purpose: control. Their dawn rituals involved cold, discomfort, movement, and discipline. They conditioned their bodies to obey command before emotions or preferences could intervene. A Spartan morning was a declaration: I lead, my impulses follow. This physical awakening sharpened mental courage. Shaolin monks practiced morning purifications through breath, stretching, chanting, and movement designed to expel mental fog. They believed stagnation in the body created stagnation in the mind. A single deep breath, grounded in the belly, was seen as a way of clearing internal turbulence. Their mornings were a merging of body and spirit, preparing them to move with calm intensity. The Stoics began at dawn with reflection. They asked themselves who they intended to be that day. Not in terms of tasks, but identity. They wrote, they contemplated. They confronted their tendencies toward fear, anger, or distraction before the world had the chance to trigger them. For them, the morning was a rehearsal of the soul, a time to remind themselves that a man must lead his emotions, not obey them. All these practices, different in method, shared one purpose: to purge the mind of chaos before the world could add more to it. A modern man's morning is often the opposite. He wakes, reaches for his phone, fills his mind with noise, and loses control before the day even starts. He steps into the world uncentered and wonders why his discipline collapses. It's not because he's weak, it's because his mind never had a moment to stabilize. The morning mind purge gives that moment back. It can be simple: silence before stimulation, breath before movement, intention before action. No rushing, no scrolling, no chaos. Just a few minutes to claim yourself before the world makes demands. Because when a man owns his morning, he owns his mind. And when he owns his mind, the weak part of him begins to die. Strength doesn't return with a dramatic transformation. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or applause. It reappears quietly, just as quietly as it once faded. And at first, the signs are small, so small that many men overlook them, dismiss them, or assume they don't matter. But these early signals are everything. They are the first cracks in the armor of the weak mind, the first evidence that the deeper part of you, the part built for discipline, grit, and clarity, is waking up again. It begins with presence. You notice that your thoughts aren't as scattered as they usually are. For a moment, just a moment, you feel still. You feel a breath that actually reaches your lungs. You realize your mind isn't racing. It's a moment of clarity, almost unfamiliar, like hearing your own voice after years of noise. It might last only a few seconds, but it's enough to feel different. It's the first sign. Then you notice discipline becoming slightly easier. Not effortless. Not perfect. Just easier. You resist an impulse you normally obey. You pause before reaching for your phone. You make your bed without thinking twice. You start your morning before the world pulls at you. These small victories feel insignificant, but they're not. They're proof that your mind is beginning to listen to you again. You feel a flicker of internal strength, the feeling of choosing your action instead of reacting to emotion. Another sign emerges in your relationship with discomfort. The cold shower doesn't shock you as intensely. The push-up you didn't want to do becomes one you choose to do. The task you avoided yesterday is the task you confront today. Not because you suddenly enjoy discomfort, but because you no longer run from it automatically. This shift is profound. It shows that the part of you built for resilience is reactivating. You start caring about your actions again. There's a moment, maybe while you're breathing deeply in silence, maybe while you're walking outside, maybe while you're completing a task you normally postpone, when you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Pride. Not ego. Not arrogance. But a quiet pride. A whisper inside saying, "This is who I was supposed to be." That whisper is one of the strongest signs of all. And then comes the most surprising sign. Your emotions begin to stabilize. You're less reactive, less overwhelmed, less anxious. The things that usually trigger you lose some of their power. You feel more grounded, more capable of handling your day, more in control of your inner world. This emotional stability isn't full strength, it's the first step toward it. The fog in your mind begins to thin. Your spirit lifts, even slightly. Your posture changes, even slightly. Your discipline holds, even slightly. These shifts may be subtle, but they matter, because they confirm one thing: your strength is not gone, it was buried. And now, it's resurfacing. Every small improvement is a signal. Every signal is momentum. Every moment of momentum is a step toward the man you're becoming. This is the beginning not of perfection, but of return. The samurai understood that a warrior's sharpest weapon was not the sword in his hand, but the clarity in his mind. Before a samurai could cut down an opponent, he had to learn to cut through the noise inside himself. Weak thoughts, hesitation, doubt, fear, rumination were seen as spiritual fog. And fog, to them, was more dangerous than any visible enemy. It blinds a man from within, so they developed a practice: the mental blade. This wasn't a metaphor to them, it was a discipline. A mental sword forged through stillness, breath, and intention. The purpose of the mental blade was simple: to sever useless thoughts the moment they appeared, so the mind could return to pure focus. The samurai believed weak thoughts had a specific nature. They were slow, wandering, sticky. They pulled energy downward. They made a man hesitate when he needed to act, or overthink when he needed to move. They recognized that the mind, left unchecked, tends to wander toward comfort, fear, or self-doubt. A warrior could not allow this wandering to dictate his actions, so they trained themselves to cut these thoughts instantly. The technique was direct. The moment a weak thought appeared: I can't, what if, maybe later, I'm not ready. The samurai visualized drawing an inner blade and slicing the thought clean in half. Not wrestling with it, not arguing with it, not spiraling into it, just cutting it. A single mental strike. Sharp, clean, final. This visualization created decisive clarity. It taught the mind that hesitation would not be entertained. Instead of allowing thoughts to multiply, the warrior severed them at the root. The mind learned to remain present, focused, and responsive. The samurai did not try to control every thought, they simply refused to give weak thoughts room to grow. Modern men often do the opposite. They allow small doubts to evolve into large anxieties. They entertain worries that spiral into paralysis. They let negative thoughts pull them into mental battles that drain their strength before the day even begins. The samurai saw the trap in this. They knew the mind becomes whatever it continually rehearses. So they rehearsed decisiveness. They rehearsed clarity. They rehearsed cutting. The mental blade was also a form of self-respect. To them, the mind was sacred ground. It was not a place to store fear, excuses, or narratives that diminish a man. The warrior mindset was forged through repetition. Cut the weak thought. Return to the present. Breathe. And act. Over time, the mind becomes conditioned to move with precision. You stop giving weight to thoughts that weaken you. You stop negotiating with the part of you that wants to delay. You stop feeding the narratives that keep you small. Instead, you learn to act not emotionally, not impulsively, but intentionally. This is how the samurai built a mind capable of remaining calm in chaos. A mind capable of decisive movement. A mind that does not break under pressure. When you learn to cut weak thoughts the moment they arise, you sharpen yourself from within. The blade becomes your mind, and your mind becomes unshakable. To the Spartans, discomfort was not an obstacle, it was a forge. They believed a man's character was shaped not in moments of ease, but in the trials that pushed him past his preferences. Strength, endurance, clarity, confidence, none of these virtues could be built in comfort. Comfort breeds softness. Discomfort breeds power. And the Spartans chose power every time. Their entire culture was designed around this truth. From childhood, Spartan boys entered the agoge, a rigorous system that stripped away excess and forced them to confront hardship head-on. Cold, hunger, fatigue, pain, these were not punishments but teachers. Each challenge carried a lesson. A man who avoids discomfort becomes weak, but a man who endures it becomes unbreakable. This was not cruelty. It was preparation. The Spartans knew that the mind, left unchallenged, becomes fragile. If a man only experiences warmth, the cold destroys him. If he only experiences ease, pressure breaks him. If he only seeks pleasure, discipline eludes him. Their philosophy was simple. If life was going to be hard, then a man must be harder. Modern men often misunderstand their approach. They assume Spartans sought suffering for its own sake. But the purpose was never suffering, the purpose was control. By enduring discomfort intentionally, they took ownership of the one thing a man can truly command: his response. They believed that controlled hardship builds controlled minds. Every morning run, every endurance drill, every difficult task sharpened their internal fortitude. When faced with real danger, they were not shocked by adversity. They had rehearsed hardships so many times that difficulty felt familiar. Pain did not intimidate them. Fatigue did not shake them. Fear did not dictate their actions. This is the essence of Spartan resilience. You become what you repeatedly endure. If you repeatedly endure pressure, you become calm under pressure. If you repeatedly endure discomfort, you become comfortable being uncomfortable. If you repeatedly endure challenge, you become stronger than challenge. Modern life has removed most forms of meaningful discomfort. A man can live for years without facing a real test. But this absence of hardship creates a fragile mind, one that panics at stress, collapses under responsibility, or retreats from anything challenging. The Spartans saw this fragility as the greatest danger of all. To live like a Spartan today doesn't mean living in constant pain. It means intentionally seeking small, daily hardships that train your mind. Finishing a task when you're tired, holding yourself still when you want to fidget, completing one more rep when your muscles burn, taking the cold shower when comfort calls, facing the difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. Each act is a miniature agoge. Every moment you choose difficulty over ease, you reclaim strength that the modern world has tried to strip from you. Every time you push through discomfort, you reinforce a powerful truth. I can endure. Endurance becomes identity. Identity becomes resilience. Resilience becomes power. This is how Spartans forged the strongest warriors of their time, not through pain itself, but through mastery of the self that emerges on the other side of pain. The Stoics believed that a man's true strength was revealed not in victory, not in achievement, not in fame or recognition, but in his ability to control his inner reaction. Every external event, every insult, every failure, every challenge, every discomfort triggers an internal response. Most men react instantly, emotionally, impulsively. They let their inner world be shaped by whatever the outer world throws at them. To the Stoics, this was the essence of weakness. A man who reacts without awareness is being led by his emotions rather than leading them. Anger hijacks him. Fear directs him. Frustration bends his judgment. Impulse steals his clarity. He does not choose, he obeys. His inner world becomes a battlefield he loses daily. The Stoics sought to reverse this. Their goal was not to eliminate emotion, a common misunderstanding, but to master the moment between feeling and action. They believed every man has a sacred pause, a small window in which he can choose how to respond. That pause is the birthplace of strength. A man who learns to expand it gains freedom. A man who loses it becomes a slave to impulse. Here is how they built this control. First, they practiced observation. Before reacting, they learned to watch their emotions rise, like a wave building in the distance. Instead of being swept away, they noticed the wave, naming it in the mind. This is anger. This is fear. This is pride. Created separation. With separation came control. The emotion was present, but it no longer dictated their behavior. Second, they reframed perception. Stoics understood that the world is neutral. It is the meaning we assign to events that causes distress. If someone insults you, the insult itself cannot harm you. It is your interpretation that creates the wound. By shifting perception, they shifted power back to themselves. The world could act, but they chose the meaning. Third, they trained through voluntary discomfort. Cold, hunger, silence. Restraint these experiences strengthened the emotional muscles. When you choose small discomforts willingly, your mind learns that you can endure discomfort internally as well. You become less reactive, less threatened, less overwhelmed by challenges. Calm becomes a learned skill. Fourth, they practice deliberate response. Instead of reacting immediately, they acted with intention. They asked themselves, is this reaction useful? Is it aligned with who I want to be? Does it serve my values or my impulses? Most emotional reactions collapse under this level of scrutiny. For the Stoics, calm neutrality was not passive. It was disciplined. It was active command over the inner world. It was the ability to stand firm when others are controlled by chaos. A man who controls his reaction controls his direction. He cannot be manipulated by insults, weakened by emotion, or thrown off course by momentary discomfort. This is the Stoic form of strength. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of response. Modern men who learn this become steady in a world that pulls everyone in 1,000 emotional directions. They become immovable. They become grounded. They become the kind of men others rely on. Because when you command your inner reaction, you command your life. Ancient warriors understood something many modern men overlook. The mind and body are not separate forces. They are one system. One influences the other. One strengthens the other. One corrupts the other. A weak body drains the mind. A disciplined body sharpens the mind. And this is why, across warrior cultures, physical training came first, not because brute strength was their highest priority, but because they knew that the body is the gateway to mastering the self. A samurai began his training with posture, breath, stance, and movement. Before he learned philosophy, he learned how to stand. Before he learned strategy, he learned how to breathe through tension. Before he practiced precision with a blade, he practiced precision with his body. They believed that a man who could not command his physical form could never command his thoughts. Physical discipline was mental discipline expressed outward. The Spartans took this truth even further. Their physical conditioning was not about aesthetics or ego, it was about shaping the mind through hardship. Fatigue taught them persistence. Pain taught them clarity. Pressure taught them calm. The body became the anvil on which mental resilience was hammered into existence. A Spartan did not become mentally tough and then train physically. He became mentally tough by training physically. Shaolin monks followed the same principle. Their movements, forms, and drills were spiritual exercises disguised as physical practice. They believed that the body carries the mind. If the body is sluggish, the mind becomes dull. If the body is restless, the mind becomes unsettled. Through repetition, sweat, and discomfort, they cultivated stillness in motion, and motion in stillness. Their bodies were forged into tools that disciplined the mind itself. Even Stoicism, often seen as purely philosophical, recognized the value of physical strain. They deliberately practiced physical discomfort to strengthen their emotional and mental resilience. Cold, hunger, exertion, endurance. These became lessons in self-control. They understood that the mind's strength is built not only through reflection but through testing the body's limits. All these traditions share the same core understanding. Physical exertion is the most direct path to mental discipline. A man who trains his body confronts himself. In the moment of exhaustion, he faces his excuses. In the moment of resistance, he meets his inner weakness. In the moment of pushing past discomfort, he discovers his capacity for strength. Physical training forces the mind to obey when it wants to rebel. It creates order where chaos once lived. It builds self-respect because effort cannot be faked. Sweat is honest. Modern men often try to rebuild their minds while living in bodies that are stagnant, overstimulated, and under-challenged. They meditate without movement, reflect without exertion, and try to create discipline without pressure. But the mind becomes sharper when the body is tested. A strong mind does not emerge from comfort. It emerges from challenge. Ancient warriors trained physically first because they knew that to change the mind, you must involve the body. You must feel the effort. You must face the resistance. You must push through the barrier. When the body hardens, the mind follows. And that is why this phase begins here. Ancient warriors knew something that modern men often forget. The breath is the switch that controls the entire nervous system. When a man's breath is shallow, frantic, or erratic, his mind becomes the same chaotic, anxious, reactive. When his breath is deep, slow, and anchored, the mind becomes calm, steady, and powerful. Warriors across cultures discovered that mastering the breath meant mastering themselves. Samurai trained their breath in the lower abdomen, a place they called the tanden. They believed this was the center of a man's power, the source of stability in movement, clarity in thought, and resolve in conflict. They breathed not into the chest, but deep into the belly. This grounded their spirit, slowed their heart, and sharpened their focus. A samurai's breath was his anchor. Through it, he kept fear from clouding his vision and emotion from overtaking his judgment. Shaolin monks refined this further. Their breathing practices were designed to calm the body so the mind could enter a state of unshakable focus. Slow inhales, longer exhales, and rhythmic cadence created internal stillness even in intense physical training. They used breath to soften the nervous system, to dissolve tension, and to cultivate the kind of mental clarity that allowed them to move with both power and peace. Stoics, though not martial artists, understood the same principle. They taught that a man cannot control external events, but he can control the internal storm triggered by those events, and breath was their first tool. Before responding, before speaking, before reacting, they returned to their breath. A slow exhale separated impulse from intention. It allowed reason to re-enter the mind before emotion took over. This was not an accident. It was strategy. Slow, deep breathing signals the nervous system to shift from survival to control. It pulls the body out of panic. It steadies the heart. It clears the mind. A man who commands his breath commands his state, and a man who commands his state becomes impossible to overwhelm. Modern men experience anxiety not because they are weak, but because they have lost this internal control. Their breathing is short and fast. Their attention is scattered. Their nervous system stays in a state of constant alert. But the warrior breath reverses this rapidly. It gives the body permission to relax and the mind permission to focus. Here is the essence of the warrior breath. Breathe deep into the lower abdomen. Exhale slowly, longer than the inhale. Focus your mind gently on the breath's path. Let tension melt with each release. This simple rhythm trains calm under pressure. It teaches the body that it is safe. It gives the mind the clarity needed to make strong decisions. Anxiety loses its grip because the nervous system shifts from chaos to command. Every warrior culture understood this truth. When a man controls his breath, he controls his emotions. When he controls his emotions, he controls his actions. When he controls his actions, he controls his life. The breath is more than air. It is the foundation of inner strength. In the eyes of ancient warriors, stillness was not the absence of movement, it was the presence of control. To them, a man who could remain unmoved in body could remain unshaken in spirit. Stillness was the ultimate test because it exposed the truth about a man's inner world. Without distractions, without motion, without noise, he was forced to confront himself. Most modern men fear stillness, not because it is painful, but because it is honest. When you sit or stand without moving, without looking at a screen, without shifting, fidgeting, or escaping, everything inside you rises to the surface. Restlessness, impatience, anxiety, the urge to move, the urge to escape, the urge to reach for comfort. These reactions reveal how little control many men have over their own minds. Warriors understood this, and they embraced stillness deliberately. Samurai practiced zanshin, the state of relaxed, alert awareness. They held postures for long periods, unmoving, breathing deeply from the lower abdomen. Their stillness trained presence, focus, and emotional stability. They believed a man who could stay still when his mind wanted to run could remain composed under pressure. Shaolin monks stood in horse stance for hours, legs burning, shoulders trembling, breath steady. This was not merely physical training. It was mental purification. Stillness under strain taught them to remain centered even when the body protested. Strength was no longer dependent on comfort. It became rooted in will. Spartan warriors also practiced forms of disciplined stillness, standing at attention, silent drills, holding formation without breaking posture. They believed that a man who could not control his body in peaceful moments would not control it in battle. Stillness was a test of loyalty to the self, proof that a man could obey his own commands without resistance. The Stoics embraced stillness from a different angle. They used it to separate emotions from action. Sitting quietly, observing thoughts without reacting, they strengthened the gap between feeling and behavior. Stillness developed sovereignty. It taught them they were not their impulses, not their fears, not their passing thoughts. What all these warriors discovered is powerful. Stillness builds inner steel. It is not passive. It is not weak. It is not easy. It forces you to face discomfort without distraction. It exposes the weaknesses you try to ignore. It reveals the noise you've been drowning in. But with practice, stillness transforms. The restlessness quiets. The mind sharpens. The breath deepens. The emotions settle. The body comes under command. In this space, strength grows not loud, not dramatic, but steady and undeniable. A man learns to endure agitation without collapsing into it. He learns to resist impulses without suppressing them. He learns to stand firm when everything inside him wants to run. Stillness becomes proof of discipline, proof of control, proof of transformation. And in a world of constant noise, constant motion, and constant distraction, the ability to remain still, to remain in full command of yourself, is one of the rarest and strongest forms of power a man can possess. There is a moment in every man's journey where progress begins to show, when discipline starts forming, when clarity returns, when the weak mind loses its grip, and it is precisely in this moment that the weak mind fights the hardest. It senses that its influence is fading. It senses that control is slipping. And like any dying force, it lashes out in desperation. This stage catches many men off guard. They expect progress to feel clean and linear. They expect the weak part of themselves to simply fade away. But the truth is far more human. Weakness resists eradication. It tries to survive. It tries to convince you that you haven't really changed. It brings back old habits, old cravings, old excuses, anything to regain control. This resistance is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you are winning. At first, the weak mind whispers. It reminds you of the comfort you used to chase, the scrolling, the avoidance, the late nights, the easy dopamine. Then, it escalates. It tells you you're tired. It tells you you deserve a break. It tells you that one relapse doesn't matter. It tries to negotiate with you not because it cares about comfort, but because it wants survival. Weakness is clever. It shows up as logic. It disguises itself as self-care. It appears as reasonable compromise. But beneath every argument is the same truth. The weak mind wants you to return to who you used to be. It tries emotional attacks next. You feel sudden frustration, sudden doubt, sudden heaviness. You might even feel more overwhelmed than before you started changing. This confuses many men. They assume the emotional spike means they are falling backward. But this surge is actually the weak mind's final flare. As your discipline strengthens, weakness amplifies its intensity in a last attempt to break your momentum. Ancient warriors understood this stage well. Shaolin monks wrote of the gate of chaos, the period before mental clarity emerges. Samurai described the trembling mind, a state of internal resistance before deep calm. Stoics observed that emotions grow louder right before the mind masters them. Even Spartans prepared their young warriors for a psychological battle fiercer than any physical one. They all knew the same reality. The mind resists transformation before it accepts it. When you start rebuilding discipline, waking early, training, controlling impulses, practicing stillness, the weak part of you feels threatened. It has lived comfortably in your habits for years. It will not disappear quietly. But here is the real victory. The weak mind cannot survive consistency. If you hold your ground during this stage, if you stay with the discomfort, refuse the old cravings, ignore the excuses, something powerful happens. The emotional storms lose intensity. The impulses lose urgency. The excuses lose credibility. The strong mind gains ground. The weak mind retreats. This resistance is not a warning to stop. It is confirmation that you are on the right path. When the mind fights back the hardest, strength is about to break through. There is a skill ancient warriors practiced that few modern men ever learn. The ability to watch weakness rise inside them without feeding it. Most men feel an emotion and immediately react. They feel doubt and collapse into hesitation. They feel anger and lash out. They feel fear and run. They feel temptation and surrender. Their internal world controls them because they treat every feeling as a command. Warriors learn to do the opposite. They learn to observe without obeying. This skill, the observer mindset, was one of the most powerful tools across samurai, Stoic, Spartan, and monastic traditions. They understood that weakness is not destroyed through force or aggression. Weakness grows stronger when you fight it head-on. It drains you, pulls you in, consumes your attention. But when you watch it calmly, without reacting, without resisting, without feeding it, something remarkable happens. It begins to dissolve. Observation removes fuel. Silence removes power. Distance removes identity. Weakness cannot survive without attention. Picture a thought rising inside you. I'm tired. I can't do this. Maybe later. This is too much. Or the emotional waves of anger, anxiety, or shame. Most men respond immediately. They believe the thought. They obey the feeling. They make it part of their identity. Warriors train themselves to pause. A samurai would notice the emotion, like a cloud passing through the sky of the mind. He would acknowledge it without following it. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. He didn't suppress it. He simply refused to be ruled by it. The emotion came, and the emotion went. He remained centered. A Stoic did the same. Marcus Aurelius wrote about watching emotions as an outsider, as if he were standing above himself observing his reactions. This created separation. With separation came clarity. With clarity came control. Shaolin monks practiced this through breath. When restlessness rose, they didn't move. They watched the restlessness. They breathed through it. Eventually, the mind quieted on its own because it had no resistance to push against. Inner storms passed more quickly because they were not met with panic or force. This is the essence of the observer mindset. Let the wave rise. Let the wave peak. Let the wave fall. Do not surf it. Do not drown in it. Do not chase it. When a man stops feeding weakness with reaction, weakness has nothing left to consume. This is especially important for emotional men, those who feel deeply, intensely, suddenly. The power is not in killing the emotion. The power is in not becoming it. When you watch an emotion, instead of merging with it, it becomes just a movement in the mind, not a command, not an identity, not a verdict. You learn that feelings are temporary, thoughts are temporary, urges are temporary. Only your actions are real. When you detach, you regain power. When you remain calm, the weak mind grows quiet. When you refuse to react, you become stronger than the emotion itself. Warriors did not win by overpowering weakness. They won by starving it. There is a moment in every warrior's journey when something inside shifts. It does not happen with shouting or triumph. It is quiet, subtle, almost invisible. But it changes everything. It is the moment a man stops negotiating with weakness and starts acting from strength. The moment he chooses the harder path, not because he wants to suffer, but because he refuses to return to the man he used to be. This is the moment strength takes root. It often arrives in an ordinary situation. You wake up tired, and the old version of you whispers, "Skip it." But this time, you don't. You get up anyway. Or you reach the final rep of your workout, and your body begs you to quit, but something deeper tells you, one more. Or you feel the urge to avoid a difficult task. But instead of retreating, you walk toward it. These moments seem small from the outside. From the inside, they are life-altering. Because strength doesn't begin when everything feels easy. Strength begins when you choose discipline while wanting comfort. Ancient warriors experienced this shift too. Samurai wrote about the moment the mind stops trembling. Spartans described the instant a boy became a soldier not when he completed the agoge, but when he stopped resisting hardship. Stoics spoke of the day a man became his own master, when he no longer obeyed impulses, but obeyed principles. Shaolin monks recognized the shift in the eyes, a calm fire replacing the frantic mind. It always begins internally. What changes is not the world around you. What changes is the man you are inside that world. You start realizing something powerful. The discomfort doesn't break you. The cravings don't control you. The emotions don't drown you. The urges don't define you. You can feel everything and still choose the right action. You can be tired and still move. You can be afraid and still advance. You can be tempted and still stay disciplined. This realization is the birth of inner strength. In that moment, you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to become stronger. You begin seeing yourself as someone who is becoming stronger. The identity shifts. The mind shifts. The internal dialogue changes from, "I hope I can do this," to, "I am the kind of man who does this." This shift is what kills the weak mind and nurtures the strong one. Soon, you notice the impact. Tasks feel lighter because you no longer resist them. Temptations feel weaker because your values are stronger. Challenges feel purposeful rather than punishing. Pain feels like progress instead of punishment. Your actions finally align with the man you want to become. Strength takes root the moment you act from discipline rather than emotion, from intention rather than impulse, from purpose rather than comfort. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It does not need validation. It is a quiet promise you make to yourself, and the first promise you finally keep. Among the most powerful and misunderstood disciplines of the samurai was the principle of no preference. This mindset was not about indifference or apathy. It was about removing the mental weakness that forms when a man depends on ideal conditions to act. To the samurai, a man who requires comfort, motivation, inspiration, or perfect timing cannot be trusted in battle or in life. His discipline is fragile. His consistency breaks the moment circumstances shift. No preference was the antidote. It meant acting the same whether conditions were favorable or brutal, rain or sun, fatigue or energy, comfort or discomfort, calm or chaos. A warrior with no preference moved forward regardless. To understand this principle, imagine a samurai preparing for dawn training. If he said, "I will train only when the weather is good," or "I will train only when I feel ready," he would never become a warrior. Instead, he trained every day without allowing preference to dictate his behavior. Preference is the language of weakness. Principle is the language of strength. No preference was not about denying discomfort, it was about refusing to let discomfort decide. The samurai believed that preference is the root of inconsistency. Preference makes a man skip the workout when he's tired, avoid the task when he's stressed, or break his discipline when conditions aren't ideal. When a man has preferences, life controls him. When a man eliminates preference, he controls himself. This is why they practiced discipline in unfavorable conditions intentionally. They trained in the cold, the heat, the rain, and the dark. They practiced techniques when exhausted, when hungry, when restless, when uninspired. They sought unpredictability because predictability breeds weakness. The world does not bend to a warrior's mood. A warrior bends to the demands of the world. To live with no preference is to say, "My actions are not dictated by how I feel. They are dictated by who I choose to be." This is the heart of the technique. Modern men struggle because they rely on preference. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for energy. They wait for the right moment. But the right moment never arrives. Not because they are incapable, but because preference has become their master. Every time a man obeys his preference, he strengthens the weak part of himself. But when he eliminates preference, Discipline becomes effortless, not easy, but automatic. The mind stops negotiating. The emotions stop debating. The excuses stop speaking. All that remains is the action itself. No, preference does not remove difficulty. It removes indecision. And indecision is where weakness grows. When a man no longer requires good conditions to act, he becomes dangerous in the best way. He becomes consistent. He becomes dependable. He becomes unshakable. Rain cannot stop him. Fatigue cannot stop him. Doubt cannot stop him. Mood cannot stop him. He becomes stronger than circumstance. This is the samurai way. Act with no preference, and weakness has nowhere left to live. The Spartans understood something that modern men often forget. Motivation is unreliable. It fades, shifts, and disappears when you need it most. A man who depends on motivation is inconsistent. A man who waits to feel ready never becomes strong. The Spartans solved this problem with a mindset forged in the agoges, the training system that shaped boys into warriors. This mindset can be summarized in one principle: do what must be done. Not what you feel like doing. Not what seems convenient. Not what gives immediate reward. What must be done. In the agoge, boys were not asked whether they wanted to train, to endure, to push, to fight. Wanting had nothing to do with it. Duty decided their actions, not emotion. They were taught that a warrior who acts only when it feels good is no warrior at all. Discipline required obedience to principle, not obedience to mood. This is the core of the agoge mind. Feelings are temporary. Duty is permanent. The Spartans believed that every man has two voices inside him. One voice seeks comfort, delay, and escape. The other seeks responsibility, action, and honor. The agoge conditioned warriors to ignore the first voice completely. They trained the second voice to speak louder until it became their default identity. Tasks weren't debated. They were executed. Challenges weren't pondered. They were faced. Their mindset became simple, brutal, and effective. There is a job. I will do it. Modern procrastination is the opposite mindset. It is the habit of allowing emotions to override duty. A man thinks, I don't feel like doing this right now. And he treats that feeling as if it is a legitimate reason to avoid action. The Spartans saw this as a form of weakness, not because rest or hesitation is shameful, but because letting emotion govern action makes a man unreliable. A Spartan could not afford unreliability. His life, and the lives of others, depended on his consistency. But here's what made the agoge mind powerful. It did not require perfection. It required direction. Every day, a Spartan confronted discomfort. Every day, he pushed himself. Every day, he acted before thinking, before doubting, before negotiating. Over time, doing what must be done became natural. It became identity. And when something becomes identity, it becomes effortless, not in difficulty, but in commitment. A man who embodies the agoge mind doesn't eliminate fear or fatigue. He simply refuses to let them decide his actions. He works when he doesn't feel like working. He trains when he'd rather rest. He finishes tasks while others procrastinate. He holds the line inside himself so he can hold the line in the world. This is not outdated warrior philosophy. It is the antidote to modern inconsistency. When a man chooses duty over mood, he becomes trustworthy. When he chooses action over procrastination, he becomes unstoppable. When he chooses what must be done over what he wants to do, he becomes strong. The agoge mind does not ask, do you feel like it? It declares, do it anyway. To the Stoics, a man defeated by his emotions was a man defeated by himself. They believed emotion was not the enemy, but losing control to emotion was the deepest form of weakness. Anger, fear, envy, sadness, pride, impulsiveness. None of these were shameful on their own. What mattered was whether a man acted from them or through them. Stoic strength was measured by calm command, the ability to stay centered when the world tried to pull the mind apart. Weakness died the moment emotion lost control. Stoic training was not about suppressing feeling. Suppression only buries emotion deeper, where it gains strength. Stoics practiced something far more powerful: awareness without attachment. When a surge of emotion rose within them, they didn't panic or react. They observed. They separated themselves from the feeling, as if watching a wave rise and fall in the distance. This separation created power. The emotion existed, but it did not command. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind should be like a rock hit by the sea, unmoved by the crash of the waves. The waves are real. The impact is real. But the rock remains itself. Stoics trained to become that rock. Steady, grounded, impossible to sway off purpose. They did this through deliberate practices. First, they used pausing as a weapon. When emotions surged, they did not speak immediately. They did not act immediately. They inserted a breath between stimulus and reaction. A single breath. That small space changed everything. In that space, clarity could return. Impulse lost its momentum. Emotion lost its authority. Second, they practiced reframing. Stoics understood that humans suffer more from their interpretations than from actual events. So they trained themselves to reinterpret challenges as training, setbacks as lessons, insults as reflections of the insulter, not themselves. This mental reframing weakened emotional spikes and strengthened internal calm. Third, they embraced voluntary discomfort, not for hardship itself, but to thicken emotional skin. By enduring cold, hunger, silence, and fatigue, they taught the mind not to overreact to difficulty. The world's discomfort no longer triggered emotional chaos. They had rehearsed staying calm inside it. Fourth, they cultivated identity-level control. Stoics asked daily, "What kind of man do I choose to be?" Not reactively, but intentionally. This question anchored them. It reminded them that character, not emotion, should guide action. Over time, emotional storms lost their power. Anger arose, but the Stoic did not obey it. Fear appeared, but he did not retreat. Temptation whispered, but he did not follow. Sadness weighed on him, but he did not collapse. His emotions were real, but he remained the master, not the servant. This is the essence of Stoic emotional mastery. You cannot control what you feel. You can always control what you do. Modern men often feel ruled by emotion because they never learned this skill. They confuse emotional intensity with truth. They mistake impulse for direction. They assume feeling something means they must act on it. Stoics knew better. A man becomes strong when he stops being moved by every internal wave. A man becomes dangerous in the best way when he controls his emotional world. Weakness dies when emotion loses control. Strength begins when you reclaim it. Most modern men chase the image of strength, not the reality of it. They seek the physique, the status, the aesthetics. They imagine strength as something loud, dramatic, or visibly impressive. But across warrior cultures, real strength was never defined by appearance. It was defined by reliability, clarity, and courage. These were the traits that determined whether a man could be trusted by others and by himself. Real strength begins with reliability. To a warrior, reliability meant showing up whether conditions were perfect or miserable. It meant being a man whose word held weight, a man who did what he said he would do, especially when it was inconvenient. The samurai judged strength by consistency. Spartans judged strength by duty. Stoics judged strength by alignment between one's principles and one's actions. In all cases, the message was the same. A strong man is dependable. Not sometimes. Not when he feels like it. Always. Reliability is the foundation of strength because it builds self-trust. When you know you can rely on yourself, your confidence is no longer fragile or external. It becomes internal, grounded, and unshakable. The second pillar of real strength is clarity. A man without clarity is easily manipulated, easily discouraged, easily derailed. Clarity gives direction. It narrows the mind. It eliminates noise. Warriors understood that a man who knows what he stands for, and what he will not tolerate, moves through the world with precision. His actions are deliberate. His decisions are steady. His focus is razor-sharp. Clarity is not about knowing the entire path. It's about knowing the next step, and taking it with conviction. When a man lacks clarity, his strength evaporates. He hesitates. He overthinks. He becomes scattered. But when clarity returns, strength follows naturally. The mind becomes streamlined. The spirit becomes anchored. The man becomes decisive. The final pillar is courage, not the absence of fear, but mastery over it. Ancient warriors knew fear well. They felt it before battle, before hardship, before uncertainty. But they moved anyway. Courage, in every warrior tradition, meant acting in alignment with principles despite emotional resistance. It meant stepping into discomfort willingly. It meant holding the line when every part of you wants to retreat. Courage is not loud. It is disciplined. It is quiet. It is chosen. A courageous man is not reckless, he is responsible. He does what must be done, even when it shakes him, even when it scares him, even when it tests him. This is the kind of strength that transforms a man's character. It builds a spine that doesn't bend under stress, temptation, doubt, or pain. When reliability, clarity, and courage come together, something powerful happens. Strength becomes identity. You stop trying to act strong and start being strong. You stop chasing validation and start creating value. You stop collapsing under pressure and start thriving in it. Real strength is not a mask or a performance. It is the quiet power of a man who trusts himself, knows his path, and faces life with disciplined courage. This is the strength every ancient warrior sought, and the strength every modern man can build. Chaos exposes a man. It reveals whether his strength is real or imagined. Anyone can feel composed when life is gentle. Anyone can feel disciplined when things go according to plan. But when pressure rises, when uncertainty strikes, when problems pile up all at once, this is when a man's true foundation is revealed. Ancient warriors were not strong because they avoided chaos. They were strong because they trained to remain unshakable inside it. This was not natural. It was practiced. It was intentional. Samurai, Spartans, Stoics, and monks all understood the same truth. The world will not become calmer for your sake. You must become calmer for the world's sake. You must learn to become the still point at the center of the storm. How did they cultivate this? First, they accepted that chaos is inevitable. Modern men often crumble because they believe stress means something is wrong. Warriors believed the opposite. Stress simply meant life was happening. When you stop treating chaos as a threat and start seeing it as normal, your entire relationship with difficulty changes. You don't panic. You don't spiral. You don't internalize the storm. You simply navigate it. Second, they controlled their internal state when the external world was out of control. Throughout warrior traditions, one rule emerges repeatedly. When you cannot control circumstance, control your breath. The breath is the anchor. Slow exhale. Deep belly. Calm posture. This sends a command to the nervous system. Stand firm. As the body calms, the mind follows. As the mind settles, clarity returns. This is not philosophy, it is physiology, used long before modern science explained it. Third, they focused only on the action in front of them. Stoics practiced narrowing their field of attention to a single task even in overwhelming situations. Spartans trained to keep formation and execute their role regardless of the chaos around them. Samurai practiced responding without overthinking, trusting disciplined instinct over emotional panic. They all lived by a simple principle: do the next right action. Not all actions, not every solution, just the next one. Chaos becomes manageable when broken into steps. Fourth, they grounded themselves in identity. A man who knows who he is cannot be easily shaken by circumstance. Confusion collapses when identity is strong. Warriors reminded themselves daily, what kind of man am I? How does a man of my principles act in this moment? Identity turns chaos into a test, not a threat. And finally, they refused to mirror the chaos around them. Chaos tries to pull you into its rhythm, fast, frantic, emotional. Warriors resisted this pull. They stayed slow when life became fast. They stayed deliberate when life became overwhelming. They stayed calm when others panicked. That calm was not weakness. It was command. To become unshakable does not require a perfect life. It requires a trained mind. It requires the ability to be still inside, even when everything outside is unstable. This is not beyond modern men, it is simply a skill they were never taught. You become unshakable the moment you stop matching the world's chaos and start imposing your inner calm upon it. Every man who commits to the path of discipline eventually reaches a moment where he realizes something profound. He is no longer the person he used to be. The habits may still be forming. The discipline may still be growing. The journey may still be long, but identity has shifted. And identity is the root of all lasting transformation. This is the moment weakness is no longer simply resisted. It is no longer fought. It is no longer negotiated with. It is outgrown. Strength stops being a behavior. It becomes who you are. It begins subtly. You notice that things that once felt impossible now feel natural. Waking early is no longer a battle. Training is no longer a debate. Holding your posture, calming your breath, choosing the harder path, all of these start to feel like default settings rather than heroic efforts. Consistency no longer drains you. It defines you. You begin to understand that the strongest men are not those who force discipline, they embody it. They do not wrestle with decisions. They do not argue with impulses. They act because action aligns with who they have become. The internal friction fades, replaced by an inner certainty. A new identity forms. The man who does what he says he will do. Ancient warriors describe this moment in their own ways. Samurai wrote of Fudoshin, the immovable mind. Not rigid, but rooted. A man whose spirit cannot be disturbed because he has aligned himself with a higher code. His actions are not merely choices. They are expressions of his nature. Spartans called it becoming fit to stand in the line. It meant you were no longer a burden to the man beside you. You had become someone others could rely on. Reliability was identity, not effort. Stoics saw this shift as mastery of self. A man transitions from being ruled by emotion to ruling his own inner world. His calm becomes a permanent companion rather than a temporary achievement. Shaolin monks recognized it when a student's movements no longer looked like techniques, but like extensions of his spirit. Across all traditions, one truth echoes. Strength becomes real when it becomes identity. For the modern man, this shift is equally transformative. You stop introducing yourself to your own mind as the man who is trying to improve. You become the man who has improved, who keeps improving, because that is now who you are. The weak voice returns less often, and when it does, it feels foreign, like an echo from a past life that no longer fits. Your relationships change, your posture changes, your tone changes, your decisions change, your environment begins to shift around your new presence. People sense it, you sense it, life responds to it. Strength becomes something deeper than discipline. It becomes character. It becomes identity. It becomes home. This is the point most men never reach, not because it's unattainable, but because they never remain consistent long enough to experience the shift. But when it finally arrives, it becomes clear. You did not just eliminate weakness, you became someone it can no longer inhabit. Every ancient warrior system, samurai, Spartan, Shaolin, Stoic, shared the same foundation. Even though they arose in different cultures, each of them understood that weakness is not eliminated through a single practice, a single habit, or a single realization. Weakness dies only when a man rebuilds himself on three unified pillars: mind, body, and duty. These pillars formed the backbone of warrior training for centuries, and they remain just as powerful for modern men today. Together, they create a complete system, one that strengthens you from the inside out. Pillar 1. The mind command over the inner world. The first pillar is the mind, because internal chaos always creates external weakness. The samurai taught that a man without inner command becomes confused, reactive, and easily manipulated. The Stoics saw the same truth. If emotions rule you, the world rules you. If impulses lead you, weakness follows. Strength begins when the mind becomes disciplined. This pillar is built through stillness, breath control, clear awareness, cutting weak thoughts, observing emotion without obeying it. When you gain sovereignty over your inner world, You stop collapsing under stress, temptation, fear, or self-doubt. You choose your actions instead of reacting blindly. You gain clarity, presence, and the ability to remain calm when others fall apart. A disciplined mind makes a disciplined man. This is the first pillar because without it, nothing else holds. Pillar 2. The body hardship as the forge. Warrior cultures all knew the same truth. The body shapes the mind. Physical exertion forces the mind to obey. Training teaches resilience. Hardship builds confidence. A weak body does not create shame, it creates instability. A strong body does not create ego, it creates clarity. Physical discipline provides what modern life has lost: a daily confrontation with discomfort. When you push your body, you break the identity of weakness. You learn to endure pain, resist impulses, push past resistance, and master your own tendencies toward comfort. You do not need extreme training. You need consistency, movement, strain, effort, sweat. Every rep is a message to the mind. I can endure, I can push, I can grow. The body becomes a training ground for courage, self-respect, and discipline. This is why warriors trained physically first, because the body is the doorway to mental strength. Pillar 3. Duty acting because it must be done. The final pillar is duty. This was the Spartans' greatest lesson. While the mind provides clarity and the body provides resilience, duty provides direction. Duty is the principle that governs your actions when emotions fluctuate. It is the code that replaces preference. It is the spine of consistency. Duty-based action means you do what must be done, not what you feel like doing. You follow your principles, not your impulses. You act with integrity even when no one is watching. Duty transforms discipline into identity. It is the force that makes strength permanent. When these three pillars merge, weakness has nowhere left to exist. The mind becomes still. The body becomes strong. The actions become consistent. This is the warrior system, timeless, simple, and powerful. A structure any man can follow. A path any man can walk. A foundation no external force can shake. Strength is not built in dramatic moments. It is built quietly, in the daily rhythms that shape a man's identity. Ancient warriors understood this deeply. Their power did not come from rare acts of courage but from ordinary rituals repeated with unwavering consistency. These rituals were simple, clear, and grounded in purpose. They can be adapted to any modern man seeking strength today. Below are the core daily practices shared across warrior cultures, rituals that harden discipline, sharpen clarity, and eliminate weakness from the roots. 1. The morning reset. Claim the mind before the world does. Every warrior culture began the day with intention. Samurai sat in silence, breathing into the lower abdomen to steady the mind. Stoics began with reflection, asking who they intended to be that day. Shaolin monks used movement and breath to purge internal stagnation. Spartans trained at dawn, conditioning the mind through discomfort. The lesson is the same across all traditions. If you do not claim your mind in the morning, the world will claim it for you. A modern man's morning can be simple. A few minutes of stillness, deep, calm breathing. A written intention or principle, silence before digital noise. This ritual aligns your spirit before the day begins. It converts chaos into clarity. It sets you in command. 2. Physical training, the anchor of discipline. Warriors strengthened their bodies daily because they knew the body trains the mind. Spartans embraced endurance and hardship. Samurai conditioned posture, movement, and breath. Shaolin monks trained with fluid intensity and repetition. Even Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to sharpen resilience. You don't need extreme training. You need consistency. A daily practice of effort lifting, running, martial arts, calisthenics, or even intense walking reminds the mind who leads. Training is not just physical. It is psychological warfare. Every rep is an act of claiming yourself. Every drop of sweat is a message. I do the hard things. This ritual builds confidence, presence, and clarity. 3. Evening reflection, sharpening identity. Ancient warriors ended the day with reflection. Stoics journaled each night, reviewing their actions and emotions. Samurai analyzed their conduct, identifying where their spirit wavered. Monks ended their day in silence to settle the mind. Even Spartans used communal accountability to reflect on performance and duty. Reflection is not guilt. Reflection is refinement. In a modern life, the ritual can be simple. What did I do well today? Where did I hesitate or fall into weakness? What will I do better tomorrow? This nightly ritual keeps your identity sharp. It ensures your progress does not slip into unconsciousness. It builds self-awareness without self-condemnation. These three rituals, morning clarity, physical training, evening reflection, form the spine of ancient strength. They take minutes, not hours. They require commitment, not perfection, but when practiced daily, they reshape the mind, harden the body, and anchor the spirit. Warriors did not become strong by accident. They became strong because their days were designed for it. So can yours. The ancient warrior's path was not mystical, complicated, or reserved for a chosen few. It was built on systems, simple, repeatable steps practiced with consistency until they reshaped a man's identity. Modern men often believe transformation requires dramatic change. But warriors understood the truth. Strength is a pattern, not an event. Once the pattern is learned, it can be repeated for life. This is the repeatable warrior path, clear, structured, and applicable to any man who commits to it. Step 1. Subtract before you add. The first phase of the warrior path is removal. Before building discipline, you must eliminate what weakens you. Reduce noise. Limit comfort. Cut digital chaos. Remove temptations. Silence unnecessary distractions. The weak mind thrives in clutter. The strong mind emerges in space. This step clears the internal battlefield so strength can return. Step 2. Command the morning. Once subtraction creates clarity, the next step is taking control at the start of each day. Every warrior culture used dawn as the moment of reset. Stillness, breath, intention, reflection, early movement. This is not about perfection. It is about establishing command before life pulls at you. When you master your morning, you set the rhythm of the entire day. Step 3. Strengthen the body to strengthen the mind. Warriors didn't separate physical discipline from mental discipline. They understood that hardship builds resilience. Your daily physical ritual becomes the training ground for endurance, discipline, courage, focus, self-respect. Every time your body resists and you push anyway, the weak mind dies a little more. Every rep reinforces, I do what must be done. Step 4. Practice the warrior mindset. This is the phase where you train your inner world directly. Cut weak thoughts like a samurai. Embrace discomfort like a Spartan. Control reaction like a stoic. Watch emotions like a monk. When you gain command over your thoughts, emotions, and impulses, you become consistent not because life is easy, but because your mind is steady. Step 5. Live by duty, not preference. This is the phase where strength becomes identity. Do the right action whether you feel like it or not. Follow your principles even when uncomfortable. Lead your emotions instead of obeying them. Honor your commitments as if they are sacred. Duty builds reliability. Reliability builds identity. Identity builds unstoppable strength. Step 6. Reflect, refine, repeat. The warrior path is continuous. Each night, review your actions. Acknowledge your victories. Identify weak moments without shame. Plan the next day. Reflection sharpens your path. Repetition makes it permanent. This system is not theoretical. It is ancient, proven, and adaptable. Subtract. Command your morning. Train your body. Forge your mind. Act from duty. Reflect. Repeat. Follow these steps, and strength will not be something you chase. It will become the man you are. Most men carry a quiet belief that they are not meant for strength. They look at disciplined men, focused men, powerful men, and think, that's not me. They assume strength is a gift granted to the lucky few, those born with better genetics, better circumstances, better discipline. But this belief is not truth. It is a story created by years of living in environments that reward comfort and punish effort. You are capable of strength not because you have proven it yet, but because every man is. Weakness is not a flaw in your character. Weakness is a pattern you practiced. And patterns can be unlearned. Strength is not a personality trait. Strength is a skill. And skills can be trained. If you look back over your life, you'll notice something. Every time you acted with courage, every time you kept a promise to yourself, every time you stood tall despite fear or doubt, you felt something ancient move inside you. That wasn't an illusion. That was the real you, the part untouched by avoidance, fear, or self-doubt. That part of you is still there. It has been there the entire time. The only reason you have doubted your capability is because the world around you has trained you away from strength and toward softness. You were taught convenience, not discipline. You were encouraged to escape discomfort, not confront it. You were shown shortcuts, not resilience. But none of this reflects your true potential. It only reflects your training, and training can be changed. Ancient warriors didn't rise from perfect beginnings. Many of them struggled deeply with fear, with anger, with hesitation, with internal chaos. Their strength came from the simple truth that they trained themselves into becoming the men they respected. They shaped themselves through repetition, effort, failure, and persistence. You can do the same. Strength begins the moment you stop believing the lie that you are broken and start accepting the truth that you are unfinished. The man you are right now is not a verdict. He is a starting point. Strength is built through tiny, consistent acts. A disciplined morning, a completed workout, a controlled breath, a moment of stillness, a decision made from duty instead of emotion. The first step is not dramatic. The first step is not glamorous. The first step is simply this: believe that you are capable of becoming stronger than you are today. You don't need perfect habits yet. You don't need complete clarity yet. You don't need flawless discipline yet. All you need is the willingness to begin. Every man capable of weakness is capable of strength. Every man who has fallen can rise. Every man who has doubted himself can rebuild himself. You are no exception. Within you is the same potential that fueled samurai, Spartans, Stoics, monks, and warriors across time. The same courage, the same resilience, the same ability to endure, rise, and transform. Your path does not begin with perfection. Your path begins with belief. I can become strong, and the moment you accept that, the journey truly begins. Transformation does not begin with a perfect routine. It does not begin with a full life overhaul. It does not begin with a dramatic vow to change everything at once. These attempts overwhelm the mind and collapse under their own weight. Every warrior culture, every discipline system, every mastery tradition teaches the opposite. Strength begins with one act. One deliberate action that signals to your mind, I am changing. For a man stuck in inaction, the first step must be simple, not because you are incapable of more, but because momentum is born from clarity, not complexity. The weak mind thrives on overwhelm. It tells you that you must fix everything, clean everything, transform everything. And because everything is impossible, you do nothing. Warriors learned to break this trap. They understood that the mind respects proof, not promises. A single act of strength is proof. It can be small. It can be simple. It can take less than 1 minute. What matters is that the act is chosen intentionally and completed fully. Make your bed. Do 5 push-ups. Take 1 cold shower breath. Sit in morning stillness for 30 seconds. Finish 1 task you've avoided. These are not small, they are symbolic. They are the first crack in the shell of inaction. A Spartan boy's transformation did not begin with battle. It began the first time he obeyed duty over preference. A samurai's transformation began the first time he cut through hesitation with clarity. A monk's transformation began the first time he sat still when his mind begged him to move. A stoic's transformation began the first time he responded with calm instead of impulse. Strength always begins in a moment where the weak voice says, "Not today," and you answer, "Today." One act of discipline breaks inertia. One act builds credibility. One act creates momentum. The mind, which once doubted you, begins to shift. It notices, he acted. And with each repeated act, the mind starts believing, this is who he is now. This identity shift is what makes long-term discipline possible. The key is choosing an act so simple you cannot avoid it. Not run 5 miles. Not meditate for an hour. Not rebuild your entire life this week. Just one small act that leads to the next. Because the truth is this: you don't climb a mountain by focusing on the summit. You climb it by taking one sure step. You don't rebuild your life by imagining the future. You rebuild it by acting in the present. Your first act of strength is the foundation. The second act is the reinforcement. The third act is the momentum. Soon those small acts accumulate. Soon they become habits. Soon they become identity. And the man who once felt stuck in inaction becomes unstoppable. Start small. Start simple. Start now. One act is all you need to change direction. Momentum will take care of the rest. Every warrior's journey has a beginning, a clear moment when intention turns into commitment. For ancient warriors, this was an initiation, a ritual, a vow. For you, it can be today. What lies ahead is not a challenge of perfection but a challenge of consistency. Your 100-day warrior rebuild is not about becoming someone else. It is about stripping away what has weakened you and returning to the man you were meant to be. 100 days may sound long, but it is nothing compared to the years you've spent feeling stuck, lost, unfocused, or disconnected from your potential. These next 100 days can become the most defining stretch of your life, not because they will be easy, but because they will be intentional. Here is what the warrior rebuild represents. Day 1. 20. Clearing the fog. This is where you remove noise, reduce comfort, take control of your mornings, and reclaim your attention. These first 20 days are about subtraction. You will feel the weak parts resisting. You will feel impulses rising, but you will also feel moments of clarity breaking through. You will finally breathe again, deeply, fully, intentionally. Day 2150. Building the inner command. This phase is about training your mind. You will use the samurai's mental blade, the Spartan's embrace of discomfort, the Stoic's emotional control. You will watch weakness without feeding it. You will feel the shift, the quiet power of choosing your responses instead of being controlled by them. Day 5180. Strengthening the body, strengthening the self. Here, your body becomes the forge. Training becomes the anchor. Stillness becomes a test. Breath becomes a weapon. You will break through physical resistance and discover that your body was never the barrier your mind was. This phase turns discipline into identity. Day 81, 100. Becoming the warrior. The final stretch is integration. Mind, body, and duty merging into one. You will begin acting not from habit or pressure, but from identity. You will feel yourself becoming someone new, someone reliable, centered, powerful, unshakable. Weakness will feel foreign. Strength will feel natural. This 100-day journey is not rigid. It is not about punishing yourself. It is about rebuilding yourself daily. Deliberately, patiently. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need perfect motivation. You don't need perfect conditions. You need one thing: a beginning. A single decision to no longer live beneath your potential. A single moment where you say, enough. A single step toward the man you want to become. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Every day. For 100 days. At the end of it, you will not just feel stronger, you will be stronger. Not only in body, but in mind, discipline, courage, and identity. You will look back and see that the warrior you admired was never someone else. He was the version of you waiting to be awakened. Your 100-day warrior rebuild begins today. Take the first step. The path is yours now.